Yesterday we had a video on what? APU and RH. And I requested you people to give suggestions what more questions you want me to analyze and produce in the form of video. But response is not encouraging, I would say. I promise that we'll be making lethal and sublethal. But if you don't want it, then what is the need? We'll go our own way, the way we do. So if you think we should, but one thing is there, some of the beginners, they have shown their disenchantment with these videos. Actually, these videos are not meant for those who know nothing ABC of anthropology. This is analysis of the paper of Mains 24. So these are meant for those who are ready with their anthropology. So once you have done it, then you can take benefit of it. Directly you cannot. You may not be knowing even the terminology at this juncture. So you can visit our videos on terminology and then you can understand. So those who are appearing in 25, ready for the test series, or even 26, there are people who are ready for anthropology. They'll definitely benefit. Others need not worry about. When your turn comes, you will. Presently, we'll talk about lethal and sublethal. These terms are very common, and a lot of literature is available on Google also, YouTube also. What is lethal? Absolutely harmful for survival. In the case of humans, the person may die prematurely, and even if he or she doesn't die, fails to reproduce. Means the genes will not enter the next generation. Sublethal or semi-lethal, you can use synonymously. Fertility is there, but much less compared to the normal fertility. We know about many lethal and sublethal genes, autosomal dominant or recessive, or X-linked dominant or recessive. Name one or two. Hemophilia is there, where is color blindness problem? Firstly, autosomal. You have Huntington disease, is autosomal dominant. NAV is lethal, NAV it is not. Hampers the mental capacity and capability, damage is there. But hampers late, in mid-20s or so. So if a man is married early, he would have kids. So the gene is sustained that way only. Or cystic fibrosis, it is autosomal recessive. Damages your lungs and digestive system. But in heterozygous, homozygous effect, and that homozygous effect you see in the case of sickle cell. That homozygous effect you see in the case of chondrodysplasia, chondrodystrophic dwarfism, what do you say? When the individuals survive to an extent, like in the case of erythroblastosis brutalis, first child is normal unless there is the damage to placenta. So plenty of cases you can. But how does it, what is the role of lethals and sublethals in anthropology, human biology, evolution? Hemoglobin S is in homozygous conditions, it is lethal. Heterozygous condition, it may be lethal in certain conditions where oxygen is less, hypoxia. But in malarial conditions, it becomes advantageous. So it has been helpful in the evolution of Mediterranean populations. But if you have understood the microevolution, there are 5 factors of microevolution: gene mutation, natural selection, inbreeding, hybridization, and genetic drift. And you have a flow chart with you in your class notes. You have microevolution, you have gene mutation, natural selection, inbreeding, hybridization, and genetic drift. Five factors are there. Drift always leads to inbreeding. Hmm? Then these are the factors that lead to microevolution. But as you already know, sorry, in natural selection operates on gene mutation, natural selection operates on inbreeding, and natural selection operates on hybridization. In the case of gene mutation, there may be dominant lethal mutations. I gave you the examples. There may be autosomal recessive. There may be X-linked, any mutation you know about, any disease, any lethal or sublethal. They ask you in general studies also. Hemophilia, it is lethal or sublethal? The example which they give you in the exam, uh, Duchenne. No, I think this is not. Duchenne type of muscular dystrophy is there. X-linked recessive. Degeneration of muscles of all sensitive organs towards the end of teens, and after immediately after 2025 the person dies. X-linked recessive it is. So mutation, lethal or sublethal, whenever it is there, role of natural selection has to be there. And what is the role of natural selection in lethal or sublethal? In terms of fecundity and fertility. A disadvantage is variation, lesser the fecundity fertility. If it is lethal, zero fecundity. If it is sublethal, some fertility may be there, but greater the loss, faster will be the elimination of the group. And same is the case with inbreeding with respect to recessive. Inbreeding increases homozygosity and thus reduces genotypic variability. And if a gene is autosomal recessive, what will happen? If it is lethal or sublethal, the moment it becomes homozygous, its phenotype appears and it is eliminated through natural selection. Hmm? But in the case of X-linked recessive, in the case of autosomal recessive, it becomes homozygous. In the case of X-linked recessive, X is this big and Y is this small. In autosomes, you have homozygous. In the sex chromosomes of males, there is no question of becoming homozygous. Any allele which is present here, there is no counterposition. Like color blindness is there, hemophilia is there, Duchenne type of muscular dystrophy is there. This is X-linked recessive. So, if you have, in the case of female, hemophilia, heterozygous, we call it carrier, it does not affect your dominant suppresses. But in the case of male, if it is present, what is the definition of recessive? They ask you once in your GS prelims. Recessive is not the one that expresses in homozygous. A dominant is present whenever it is present, expresses itself, but a recessive expresses in the absence of a dominant. In autosomes, it is homozygous. In sex chromosomes, this cannot be homozygous. That will be requiring two alleles. It cannot be heterozygous also. That will also require two alleles. This condition in the sex chromosomes of males, it is called hemizygous. A dominant will express whenever it is present, but a recessive will express in the absence of a dominant either in homozygous or in hemizygous condition. So thus, in the case of sex-linked recessives, much more dangerous, much more lethal than in the case of girls. Like if a woman is affected, then more than 100 men are affected. That much is the difference. Sublethal genes, they do contribute in evolution wherever they can be advantageous, because it is the natural selection that decides hmm, which variation is advantageous and which is not in a particular environment, like hemoglobin S. In malaria condition, it is an important factor in evolution. But in lethality condition, that may be only negative. But if it results in the elimination, death of an individual, so many alleles are also eliminated. So inbreeding may be helpful in eliminating the harmful genes also, provided the size of the group does not diminish to such a level that the lesser variation may cause a problem. So you will talk about what is the meaning, what are the examples, the role in mutation, the role in natural selection, the role in inbreeding, the role in hybridization, but that may not be, you may not be able to include all of them in 10 markers. Better thing would be highlight your answer with natural selection at the core. Just give one example in terms of mutation or inbreeding or hybridization. Better thing would be just one example of mutation and one inbreeding will be enough. If you give all the details, that will become 20 marks. The booklet that you have, recent booklet is there, where you have the positive effect of inbreeding, and another booklet that was there, which shows the presence of syndromes in the ancient populations because of inbreeding. So it depends on the circumstances, and you can conclude accordingly. Increased homozygosity leads to negative effects on fertility in human populations. The negative effects, October 25, 2023 research is there. Namibia's Himba community are isolated agro-pastoral population in which marriage between people with the same ancestor occurs. The team gathered genetic data from 681 individuals from the Himba population. Genetic analysis revealed that the Himba have genetic markers that show higher level of inbreeding. But actually, this is of a very different type of inbreeding. There is no direct inbreeding in the same generation. They were the third generation ancestors, and their grandchildren they married. Of course, it's a form of inbreeding. A woman who has parents who are more closely related is more likely to have fewer children throughout her lifetime than a woman who has parents who are who are less related. Means greater the proximity, lesser the number of children. For human, it may be okay, lesser the number of children, because these days you don't need a big litter. In general, if you talk about in the case of animals and plants, wherever lethality is there, here lethality is not there. Okay? You can include, you may exclude, depends on you.